Beautiful.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Jamie. This is Zane. We are back for another episode of the Climbing Connections podcast. So Zane was just saying we were meant to do this before the New Zealand Nationals, which was meant to be this weekend. Do you want to explain why this isn't a pre-Nationals podcast?
I mean, I guess everybody will get that, COVID has just decimated the climbing comp scene at the moment. So we were actually meant to be doing this prior to the New Zealand Nationals as a means of kind of setting up the comp, who were the front runners, breaking down everything, being so kind of long in the tooth with both of us. But unfortunately, that's going to be pushed out for a couple of weeks till the back end of May. But we are coming off Auckland Climbing Comp, which went down not this weekend, but the weekend just passed. So we might give a little bit of a breakdown of how that went down and then what's kind of coming up in the future.
Yeah, that'd be great because for most people around Australia and New Zealand, COVID sort of stopped most of the climbing scenes other than Queensland for Australia, or you've sort of been pretty sporadic and lots of cancelled comps and things like that. So it's really good to hear that that you're able to run one comp. To give us a bit of a breakdown on how it went. I understand it was not as many judges and volunteers that were necessary.
Oh, brother, yeah. I mean, that's 100% true. The night beforehand, and I've been part of nearly every Auckland setup for as long as I can remember. The night beforehand, it was really evident that, just because of COVID and all of the different things, that we just didn't have the amount of volunteers, judges and things that is usually necessary to run. These comps can be pretty big operations sometimes. And to that effect, we actually didn't have as big a field as what you would usually have at a comp. People were kind of broken up into groups of 5, and they all just had to stay in their groups and not really intermingle. So in that way, it's just like a way different dynamic to how comps usually are. These really just like hard out people yelling events,
Yeah. So from my knowledge, the Auckland comp especially was probably, was that New Zealand's pinnacle regional comp?
Bro, for the last few years, it definitely has been the most competitive comp. To be fair, and like Auckland's my region, but to be fair, Hamilton has always put out the world champs. Hamilton has always been that spot. And they also have the university down there, which is like just putting out arborists.
Is that Wintec?
By the dozen. Yep, that's Wintec, brother.
Yeah, that's famous in Australia too. So
yeah, I mean, Wintec do what they do, brother. They put out good arborists. And because of that fact, that Hamilton championship is definitely like a gemstone in the crown. But of late, Auckland has definitely been that, and it's much like many comps, bro. It's like a field of kind of 10 people who are just like in the grind, practicing their climbing comps and focused on that top 5 to go to the Nationals. And a lot of them have got their intentions, especially some of them, bro, like the top level guys at this Auckland region, they have their eyes on the world championship, just like anyone at any good regional should.
Mm-hmm.
And that's people like Sam Smith, Sam Evan Turner, but also, bro, like there are some really good young cats coming up at the moment.
I think you got to tip your hat for a bit of that. That new crowd coming through. I'd have to say some of your students and just some of your crew that you've mentored over the years.
Yeah, I mean, bro, and we'll go into this now, I guess, a little bit, but there was a time in New Zealand, where on any given weekend, you might have 10 or 15 climbers out there just like grinding up in the trees, trying to get their foot locking times down. And that kind of scene is what led to the kind of dominance of people like Scott Forrest and Jimmy, and it wasn't just the world champs that we've had, but there was actually like a large range of climbers that were that world level that were all kind of pushing each other forward. And luckily for me, like being in uni for a while, training people was kind of like that idea of kind of having your little climbing crews that are kind of pushing each other forward, that I tried to embed in these students. And some of them, like, you can just see the proof in the pudding at the moment, because they are dynamite in the trees,
Yeah, so I suppose that brings us into who won the comp, which is one of your proud students.
Yeah, bro. Like, I mean, it's really hard for me to call Richie a student of mine anymore. He's dope. He has his own style. He's super quick. As a breakdown, like, I always look at the times for a work climb. And like, I'm gonna get this. I didn't climb. I had to judge, and that was one of the big things. It was actually my first time taking a work climb after 20 years in the climbing comp scene. So, he didn't beat me, motherfucker. You heard that shit, Richie. Yeah, bro. So like, he's the champ, and it was just amazing to see him out there. And like, bro, you really, sometimes you see climbers blossom. Do you know what I mean? Sometimes you really see climbers. Bro, I can actually remember seeing it with you, bro. Like a real time where I just like could put my like finger right on the work climb that I saw, where I was like, yeah, that dude's certified ninja at this point. Do you know what I mean? Has his own climbing style, has his own way that he thinks out a tree. And at that point, like, that's when you really start moving forward.
100%. So how many climbers were there compared to normal? Was there, did you even get 20 climbers?
No, I think there was only about 15 of us there. And then there were a few people that were already masters qualified. So that was me, and being masters qualified, we were in the masters last year, which means that we qualified for the nationals this year. Me and Sam made that. But there were some really good climbers. Sebi, who's like the New Zealand ambassador for Teffelberger, he was there. Sam Evan Turner, who is another person who is constantly on the grind, working out systems. He was also there. And then there was Sam Smith, who won the prelims at New Zealand last year, and he was there to win.
Yeah, I know he's putting a lot of work in, changing diets, and just from what I see on social media, it looks like he's really, really putting work, trying to peak coming up to the New Zealand Nationals. And look, I think, you and I have been pretty vocal advocates of this, is what we're talking about earlier with the training, like the practice. Generally the top guys that are competing at these comps at regionals and nationals are those guys that are out grinding on the weekends after hours. Like, I used to train 3 or 4 days a week and then do a full, like, after work, and then do a sort of a full day on the weekend.
Bro, so I said this, like, bro, when I gave up the spot, and it is what it is. Like, I'm not bitching about it or anything like that. But when I gave up the spot, you also know what you're giving up. That's your time to kind of like knock the cobwebs off, make sure that you're kind of comp ready. But Sam actually asked me, he was like, oh, how are you feeling about nationals? And I was like, bro, I've really got no right to say that I'm confident, because people who train should be confident. And I'm not just like in that mode of training. Come nationals, which I was prior, when I thought it was going to be like last year. But they just keep pushing it out. And for me, when I looked at Sam, I just got to be like, bro, that's heartbreaking. You've been training for all of this time, like dieting, with breathing training, also doing the kind of, practical training of being up the tree at every day, working on your work climbs, working on your ascents. And then they push out the date, and that just means that your workload gets pushed out, all of these different things, and it can really throw you off. And so I'm hoping that happens. No,
sorry.
I mean, like,
Sorry, Sam.
It's just that's just what it's like at this level nowadays. If you're not doing more than just showing up to a climbing comp, you realistically just aren't putting yourself in a position where you can win, other than through just like having a really good day. Do you know what I mean?
Yeah. I'm definitely confidence from preparation climber. Like if I've done the work, it just shows on the weekend. It's just walking into there knowing I'm ready.
Yeah, bro, it's really unquestionable, and like it was that kind of maturity. The thing is, I teched the work climb all day, but you know, you could see it. You could see it in a few of the climbers, and there were some small details that I picked up. Like for instance, teching in the work climb, you do pick up on different things, and I have to say that over the course of the day, it was wet in the morning and then fine in the afternoon, and that always plays a big part in the work climb.
Yeah.
But just little things like your ability to manage your flip line and your looping of your flip line, and just seeing Richie, who hands down for me, just scoring the work climb in the tree, definitely won the work climb. Like he had really good management of his flip line to ensure that as he was walking out a branch, he didn't trip over it or anything like that. He just would unclip his flip line and then tend it up a little bit like that to get it to the measurements that he liked, and I was just like, okay, that's dialed. That looks like a guy who knows what he's, who is thinking through his stations at the moment.
That comes from drilling. Like, when you run work climbs over and over and over and over again, do the same climb, it really starts to come down to those tiny little 1% things of knowing how much lanyard you're going to need it at each station, whether you need to tighten it up or leave it long because you're going to need the extra length at the next station, and taking that time to look pretty when you lanyard it in like that. Those little things that it isn't in the rule book, it isn't even really in the scoring for discretionaries, but those are those little things that look so slick when it comes to scoring that event.
Yeah, I know, bro. I mean, there's judges' scorecards, and then there's climbing with the boys. Do you know what I mean? And like when you're around your peers, like, bro, when Terry comes up to you and Terry's like, bro, that was mean, that you hit, nothing feels better, bro. Nothing feels better because you're like, okay, it doesn't matter what the score sheets say, like that. That
pass the eye test.
Yeah, certified ninja. You get the kind of like can climb stamp. All of a sudden, like that's real recognition. And the score sheets always say what they say. There's different levels of judging. And to be fair, at this comp, you do a rescue, and I think Richie won the rescue as well, but you do a rescue and you don't have the same level of judges that you have at a nationals, you're not going to get the same kind of consistency of scoring.
Yeah, it's hard, but it is what it is. Like that goes all the way to the World Championships level. I think last 2019 World Championship, the rescue event, a handful of judges that were running the rescue event didn't quite understand a few things, understand a few rules, asked them a few questions, whether they're responsive or unresponsive, which they're meant to let you know, and they're like, don't know. And I'm like, well, that's sort of, they were people were getting away with things that they definitely shouldn't have, like Taz on thicker ropes and all things like that. And at that level, especially, it's important. Look, at local regional comps or, amateur level comps or things like that, you expect that to a point. And you'd hope that the organisers put the more experienced judges on those events, the rescue or the work climb, where those discretionaries are really important. But it is what it is, and same for everyone.
For me, bro, like when I do a rescue, whether I know my rescues, bro, like that's the whole thing. When I know, like if I get down on the dudes and it doesn't translate in the scorecards, I can be assured enough, if I thought it was good, that it would hold up under the scrutiny of like that next level of judging. And that's all I kind of aim for. Sometimes at the regional level, you don't get the scores that you're really aiming for. But in your heart, that wasn't me. Everything I did was on point. And I'm not saying that anything like that happened at this comp, but I will say that shit's fucking happened. But heaps, but it's just like, you should have the confidence in your own climbing style. You should know your score sheet so well that you can almost get out of the tree and know what your score is.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
And look,
without knowing your time score.
We've been able to do that over the years. And I think as we get more experienced in this, you can basically know the top 5 of an event by just a couple of conversations with people on what they scored in throw line, or how fast they did this or whatever they did that, to get a pretty roundabout score. And I tell you what, these days, it'd be 5 points. I reckon we got it so dialed, just knowing the score sheets, knowing all that sort of stuff, that where people are sitting throughout the day most of the time.
So, bro, I had a discrepancy on the score sheets once, because when they came out, I knew how my climbs had gone, and then they kind of released the sheets, and I looked at them and I was like, oh, look, I haven't been attributed time points there. I said to him, nah, bro, like, I should have got this much points just on my climb. You haven't even added the time points. And like, I know that by and large, maybe not this year, but over the past, I'm not like the slowest climber in the pack. Do you know what I mean? My times are going to sit there or thereabouts. And then they went back and looked, and they were like, holy shit, we haven't awarded you like, a huge majority of the
20 points at least. 20 points at least.
That's what I mean by, and yeah, at a certain level, you should be able to calculate that stuff. And all of these guys that I'm talking about are at that level, like where you can, the Sebbies, the Sams, they all know that type of stuff,
Yeah. Has the other regional competitions been run before this nationals?
Yep. So the regionals went down for every other place in New Zealand. They've all been done. Like a lot of the heavy hitters in the New Zealand game at the moment, they're just like not competing, so your Knowles and your Jerrys aren't there,
Yeah, so what I've sort of noticed just from social media and just talking to people like yourself is we haven't seen those people competing that I'm used to competing it with or against at Asia Pacifics, and so Knowles, Jerry's, Scotty, those guys that have been the world class climbers, those world class competitors, haven't seemed to be around. Is there something going on? Is there a reason? Is it just COVID?
Nah, I mean, bro, like you'd have to. There are some people that still doing the climbing, doing the practice, but comparative to the way that the scene used to be, it's just that there's no comparison. What breeds world champions? And bro, like you're around people like Bardo, G-Man, these people who have been like fucking like pinprick away from being world champion. Do you know what I mean? Like all of these, you know what I mean? And so for they are that level. And what breeds that, bro, is a climbing scene in your area, bro. We had that in Brisbane. When I was living there. There was like 10 people that would show up to climb every weekend if you were out there jamming. And it wasn't just like, oh, I'm setting up a work climb, but everyone was setting up work climbs all around the place. You do a master's setup, I'll do a master's setup. And that kind of community that breeds world champions, and it's not that we don't have the same world champion level talent here. And we definitely still have those, like the Craigs and the Tonys, the Craig Wilsons and Mac, they're all still floating around out here. They're still doing their thing, but they're just not in the comp scene like they used to be. And bro, that is really detrimental to New Zealand as like arboriculture as an industry, to not have these pillars of the New Zealand climbing arboriculture community at these events to, gauge yourself against,
That's it. Like, I think for anybody around the world, that doesn't know should know that New Zealand has been the powerhouse team at the Worlds for the last 10 years. Like, what do you got? 3 from Scotty, 3 from Jimmy, 5 from Chrissy.
That's right.
1
Nikki,
or 2 from
Elena.
Nikki.
That's it.
Like, there's, Australia has 1 female world champion, a lot of seconds and thirds and, masters, but no actual world champion from Australia. And to sort of see, I'm an outsider looking in, to see that those guys, or that level that has been for so long, is it there? Is it not there? I haven't competed against. Last time I competed, Scotty was there. So, it'd be interesting to see. Yeah, it'd be interesting to see how this next little period for New Zealand tree climbing competition scene develops.
Right, a huge part of the reason that I want to even sit down and have these like corridors with you is so that people understand like the talent that is down here and the community that you have to have, because we should be able to like hold that world title down here for a long period of time. Bro, some of the best climbers in the world, no doubt, within this kind of trans-Tasman area. And we show up to the Worlds with so few people, but we dominate like a huge field of people, not just New Zealand, but Australia also. So it's really important, get these voices out.
That's it. The Anzac team Australian New Zealand team at the World Championships in 2019. So there was 3 Anzacs in males in the Masters, and 1 female was 4. So she just missed. Well, sorry, yeah, two females in the top 4 from the Anzac. So out of 80 climbers, we had a massive field of people in that top group, like winning events, obviously winning overalls and things like that, and then Scotty winning the world champion and Steph just missing out. And I think something that's always stuck to me, and something that you told me sort of when I first started climbing with you all the time when you're in Brisbane, was iron sharpens iron. And I think that's what Anzacs, like, if anyone wants a crash course on Australia versus New Zealand, we've been battling against each other in all different sports for, I don't know, last 100 years. And then, when it comes to, going to war or things like that, we turn into a team. And I think that, like, it's like a sibling rivalry that's just grind. And, we have things that I don't think many other people have. We obviously have our national championships. We have an Asia Pacific championships, and then New Zealand do a trans-Tasman televised championships where you get the top climbers from Australia, top climbers from New Zealand go head to head in a televised event, which is pretty sweet for tree climbing in general. And those competitions and that rivalry has pushed, rising tide floats all boats. And that's where I feel like we are as, our 2 nations.
Yeah, bro. Yeah. And, bro, when Taz showed up, the Ascent event changed, like, not only were we kind of like at the head of that game, breaking it down, making sure that we get every single point, we were doing every other thing as well to try and work out, because it's just like, we know that's coming. We're so dialed in and kind of connected to the climbing comp scene, and keeping the world titles down here, it means a lot to me. I have been climbing in the comps since I was like 18 years old, like a long time. And seeing the young guys come up, that the talent is there, but you also have to understand there is so much work that comes with attaining that, because as much as like I love to believe that if I showed up at the Worlds, I'm a chance, but you gotta experience that level. It's hard to win the Worlds on your very first time showing up, and just like for a lot of the people who have gone through from the regionals at Auckland, there were 5 qualifiers that went through, and for a few of them, it's their very first time making the nationals, and it's just a different level.
Yeah.
Do you know what I mean? It's a different level of performance. It's a different level of tree. It's a different, and I'm not saying that none of them are a shot. They're all a shot, but like you've got to step your game up when you step up into that next level. It's like going to the Asia Pacifics.
Yeah.
You know,
more often than not, it's not even that the climbs are harder. Nothing's different. You know, it's the same. You got to do the same things in every event. Sometimes the events are harder, but not often. But it's up in your head. Like, it is dealing with the pressure at a higher level. I thought when I went to the Worlds, I wasn't sure how I was going to cope with it. I actually did better than I thought I was going to be. It was actually easier events than what I thought it was going to be. And I think that sort of comes back to the level that we have here across the Trans-Tasman, that we do well here. You know, not saying it's a cakewalk, because obviously I didn't win. But it's preparing us for that next step.
Yeah, I mean, bro, a part of that, and there's no other way for me to fucking say it, because it applies to me in New Zealand. But when I climb in New Zealand, everyone knows who the fuck I am. Do you know what I mean? And I'm not like bragging when I say that. It's just like the judges already know me, and it's like I'm not saying they put points on the board because Zane's climbing or anything like that. But when I show up to the Worlds, don't nobody know who the fuck I am? Do you know what I mean?
You'd be surprised, I reckon. You'd be
Well,
surprised.
people don't know whether or not I can tie my shoes properly, let alone my knots and all the rest of it. So but when Scotty walks amongst that field, like, that's Scott Forrest, and that, bro, that resonates with judges. It's it's often the elephant in the room. But there's no way that I don't recognize the fact that my notoriety in the comp scene is a benefit to me in the comp scene. And I don't think that benefit still applies to me when I get to Worlds level. I'd hope to win Spirit of the Comp, because I know I can win that shit.
That's a shoo-in.
But you know what I mean? So it's just like taking it to that next level, introducing yourself to climbers to the judges in a way that you're climbing, it will be like, oh, okay, I am noticeable to, my climbing speaks for itself.
I think that there's a bit of a problem with social media in that regards, where people get this, like, get put up on a pedestal as, oh, that's that person, that's Scott Forrest, he's 3-time world champion. All you need to do is go and talk to him, or go and talk to them, and they're just a normal person that with the same loves and same interests as you, and you'd be really surprised. And I've had people come to me and say that to me, say, oh, I thought you'd be this way. And it's like, man, I'm the same as you. I love climbing trees, love drinking beers. We have a good time. This is what it's all about.
But sometimes you don't sometimes you don't know how loose some of these dudes to a world champ level are. You know what I mean? They're actually like, but yeah, bro. So then they actually held a Masters at Auckland. They don't usually hold a Masters, and
it's really good to see that, actually, that we hold at our regional comps, we hold a Masters at all of them, and traditionally you guys haven't until the Nationals. And it's really good to see over the last few years, and I think that you probably have a lot to do with that we are, because I know you just started doing them yourself, and then it sort of took off a little bit.
Yeah, and bro, like, that was the thing, to see them being done at the regionals that was when I very first came back to New Zealand. It was like, who won the comp? Okay, you four. I'll organize a Masters. I'll set that up for you. So let's do that. Because anyone who makes the Nationals is a chance. But if you've never climbed the Masters, it's a real big ask. You should be, if you're going to the Nationals and you want to win, get the Masters score sheet out. You need that shit. You need to know how that stuff works. And I set up the Masters. I actually set it up with the bro Sean Hardman.
And he's the man.
Bro, seeing him climb a game was dope. I just watched everyone climb in the work climb, and then Sean gets up there and just dances around, and it's so good. That's the type of thing that I mean when I'm saying that there's so many good climbers around.
Yeah.
Set the Masters. Sam Smith, Sam Turner did it. One of my students actually did it. Brian, young just the man, young kid, crazy. And he actually won Sam's freestyle comp. So, he's got like big paws on a puppy. He's got the right sort symbols of being like a goer. And then Daniel, and a lot of people had trouble getting their throw line in. Should have listened to the podcast, bro, because all of the things that we'd spoken about, it was just like that, got to touch that and that.
Yeah.
And then, and we have to do this, bro. We have to get Bardo in, and do a masters, like just like pick his brain for everything. But like the masters itself, having said it, it really lended itself to tailing your rope in one place and then kind of ponytail collecting.
So like a double line one, or take your single line device off, thread it back through.
Yeah, I mean, there were multiple ways to do it, but yeah, like either way, if you're climbing back up there, that wasn't the right way.
Yeah.
But you know what I mean? Like you could have planned that out. And Sam Smith, he actually done that quite well. But a couple of the stations that Sam Smith did in the tree were like, bro, like dodgy rope angles to the point where it's like, bro, I know that you're like, bro, we're climbing in planes. Planes don't really snap out, says the dude who snapped out a master's branch last year.
In a pin oak.
Yeah, that's what I mean. It's like, it's just like out branches, flat angles. So the points just weren't there for the taking for Sam Smith.
And that, do you think that was just because of like time constraints with not getting throws in quick? It's sort of, probably on plan C or D by that point and just trying to blast it.
Yeah, but like his roping point wasn't too bad. He actually got one of the first stations off it, which I thought that he should have taken like the time to go to the top, set the better rope angle, and then you kind of like get that the fluidity, because he had to improve his rope angle anyway, and the rope angle that he had off his access system wasn't the best. It probably wasn't the right choice to go there. And then he went up and roped in, but that took him a little while. And that's in that box where it's like overall work plan. And so that kind of brought him down. And when it comes to scoring masters, if you're scoring a 9 or a 10 on my score sheet, you flew. Like you literally grew wings and flew.
It sets the tone, really. Like if you're fluffing around, it sort of sets the tone for the rest of the climb.
Yeah, well, bro, like the thing is, I don't really score 9s and 10s. I'm probably once or twice in my life at a masters event have I, because you've always got to leave that room for someone improving and all of that stuff. Sometimes I'll give it. If you're talking about positioning at station and those types of things, but generally I leave room for improvement, because how do you know that someone's not going to come out and really improve on those things? So Sam did his thing. He got all the stations. One of the climbers, Dan, he got his ropes in, but he couldn't get all the stations off at the roping point that he took, and I think he only got 2 and bailed. And then Sam Evan Turner had a climb in the masters, and he went up, got a good throw, and made a good decision to kind of like go up and just head straight up, put his roping point in, get some of the climb busted out. And then he actually transferred back onto his single line that he'd left hanging in the tree, instead of doing like a ponytail or a rethread, which I actually thought was really smart. He got the next station, but during that station, he ended up tangling his ropes up on a branch, and rope management is another box in and I saw it, and I was like, I wonder if that's gonna, and then it ended up fouling him up.
Yeah.
He got all of his stuff out, and he actually had a really nice, climb. There were a couple of things that, just like the things you're saying, bro, like a rope that wasn't paired with the Taz, right? But overall, he had a fucking killer climb. And then, Ryan came out, first masters, he finished it.
That's pretty epic.
But it was epic. It was dope.
I finished
so
my
overall,
first
it was
2.
a dope day,
Yeah, I finished my first two, and then it was, I don't even want to count how many after my first two that it took me to finish them again. Like it's, I probably in my head too much, overthinking things, just all those things that is really important. That's why in Australia, we run masters at every event. You got to iron these creases out, and there's no better way to do it than under proper comp pressure. Like it's one thing to set it up and just do it on the weekend and practice it, which is great, but nothing, you cannot replicate the comp situation.
No, not the laying out the back for an hour, waiting for your turn to come, thinking over a plan for an hour, 2 hours. Do you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff is killer. And you have to practice that type of stuff in order to be able to perform. So bro, what's the deal? When are the nationals? What have you got coming up?
So nationals for us are the 21st, 22nd of May, which I think was when yours was postponed to, or did it get pushed a week?
We're the week after. Week after.
Yeah. No. So our nationals, we haven't had a national since 2019 either. It's been set to happen on the Gold Coast at a Royal Pines golf course, and it just keeps getting pushed back with COVID. Luckily for Queensland, as a state, we've been least affected by COVID. So we've been able to run, like last year, we ran 3 competitions. So what I did last year was actually probably a couple of years before it, a month before the Queensland Championships, I held a training day for QAA and just said, hey, I'm going to set up a heap of climbs. There's going to be score sheets. Everybody come and I'll walk everybody through everything. And after that, we ended up having record numbers. We had 50 climbers at a regional competition, which is really, really high. So building off that, last year, I decided to run a proper amateur level competition. So how it would work is we have myself, Terry, we would set it up, and when we do the walkthrough, as you normally do, I would spend a little bit longer and break everything down. And how, then for the rescue, Terry demoed it as I was talking everybody through it, like what you need to do at each part of it. Walked everybody through it. So many sponsors, can't thank them enough. We pretty much had, I want to say, 10 grand worth of prizes for amateur level competition.
Better than a normal comp.
Yeah, people would just, everybody walked away with something. And, from that, the next comp was a freestyle comp. And we had 6 people that were at that comp that had never competed before fly to Cairns, which is like flying from, Auckland to Christchurch or further, Auckland to Queenstown. So it's a long, long flight, and fly up there to compete at that, and then the same faces or some new faces where come to the Queensland comp. So like trying to build that community back up, because again, same sort of thing. We're just a little bit of a lull where, a few years ago when you were there, myself, Terry, and a few other people, we were the young guys. We were that up and coming crew. Now we're the older guys, and we're trying to bring that next crew through. So, next weekend, actually, we're holding another one. So Husqvarna Amateur Open, they've jumped on as title sponsor for it. Again, same deal. But yeah, Terry and I are gonna run a group each. So basically same as what we did last time, but each group of amateurs had like a pro, so somebody that's been doing it for a long time. So you'd have like a team leader or 2 team leaders that was able to sort of coach their little groups around, and then we would float around and just sort of really spend time and help everybody through the event so they could get that experience without being so daunting. So just trying to rebuild that culture. So next weekend will be the first comp of the year, which will be, again, Husqvarna Amateur Open, same sort of thing. So we'll run the 5 events as usual. The ascent will just be a straight up ascent. There won't be setups and changeovers. It's probably too much for people. We ran it at the Queensland, but just for this comp, we just make it a speed event. And then time permitting at the end, I'll just strip the bucket and everything out of the work climb and just make it a freestyle run if we got the time, and everyone could just go through and jam a little freestyle run off the side, which sort of brings us into our next competition in July in Cairns. So that'll be the next one. So if anybody hasn't seen, we do, so as QAA, Queensland Arboriculture, we have a YouTube channel. We get a videographer at all of our competitions. Really good for sponsors, but also it sort of pumps it up. So the practice climbing comp that I had last year, I just checked the YouTube. It's got 50,000 views.
Wow,
which is pretty sweet. It just went wild over Christmas. So, we got 3 videos. We have that one, the freestyle one in Cairns, which is in a spectacular rain tree, and then the Queensland Championships last year. So that's what we have in the next little. I think there might be a Tasmanian competition in April, but still not sure about that. I think there's a
Western Australian one as well coming up.
Yeah, that's happening. I want to say it's the end of March. I think it's my daughter's first birthday that weekend, so I'm out. I'd love to get over there.
Bo, so hoping we can do our first one of these in person at the Australian Nationals, and we'll come over and vibe. We can do a breakdown of that comp just together, bro, because I'll try and come over and guest climb for the Nationals. So there's something for people to look forward to, and just like trying to get more people involved in this. Bro, we've definitely got heaps of stuff up our sleeves and in the works. It's just it's 11 o'clock at night in New Zealand right now. The last time we filmed one of these things, it was 4 o'clock in the morning for Jamie. And it's all good. We love doing it. But we're just going to bring you more than just kind of talking about comps is all I'm saying.
Yeah. So that was really, really important for this one was to, the last couple that we've done have been, event breakdowns, and we want this to grow into more than just event breakdowns and educational speaking. Like we want to talk we want to talk trees, we want to talk climbing, travel, party, whatever it wants to be, but all those things that make us love this community.
Yeah, but and this is the thing. Each of us have got this, especially within the ARB community. There's so many stories to tell, especially within this kind of trans-Tasman ARB community. So just love to talk to Chi about the situation he's gone through with being New Zealand champ but not being able to represent at the Worlds. Love to talk to so many different people that are just doing things. There's my story to tell, your story to tell, and it'd just be cool to make these connections within the climbing community, and put it out there what's going on down this end of the world, just to get our names out there too. Not our names, but the names of our communities,
100%. People that I've met or just through social media that have watched all of these and have got they're pretty pumped, and I've had them already suggest that they'd like to come on, and which would be cool. So if we can get to the Worlds and do some stuff over there as well, like travel, do all that, anything like that, it'd be fantastic. Can we call somebody out to make more New Zealand champion spots at the World Championships? Can that happen? Seems ridiculous to me.
That's the type of thing that would be cool to converse to Tucci, to Dom, these people who are gonna because this is the first time we've had to push comps at all over COVID. New Zealand had no COVID until really recently, so we've actually had New Zealand champs that aren't going to go to the Worlds right now, both male and females. And bro, that's the dream. The dream would be to be able to put their story out there and be able to put that forward to the ITCC, because they deserve to be there. There'll be people from all across the world who are at that comp, and I can tell you right now, Chi is as good as anybody. If Chi is in a comp, and Scotty's in it, but Scotty's going to have a run for his money beating Chachi at the moment. That dude is fireworks. You know what I mean?
Chachi and I we sort of come through the Australian scene together. I know he was in New Zealand before that, and me and him were just one place in front of each other for so long, for so many comps in a row that we competed against each other. We just find ourselves battling each other. And it was my first state, like regional win in a Masters was against Chachi, and he would have had it sewed up, but he couldn't get his rope guide out. And that was all it took.
Yeah, been there, bro. And bro,
Yeah.
that's the thing, you know, like this whole thing would be just about showing what we've got, talking to these people, putting people's stories out there, you know, putting this scene on here, giving us a platform too.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
Perfect, brother. Bro, we could even get Clogger Pete on here. He's down this neck of the woods. He'd probably want to have a cordial about some shit.
He's he's actually coming to Australia next week.
Yeah, I know, bro. Like, if I could have pulled it off, I would have come too. But that's the type of thing that I mean, bro. Like, get some content out from that stuff.
Yeah.
Because, yeah, bro, super powerful.
Yeah, we'll catch up after it, and we'll do a little breakdown on that event, and then sort of just the vibe and that the rebuilding or continuation of the next generation of the Queensland climbing scene, which we're trying to push really hard. Something that's given, I know it's given you, but myself, my brother Terry, all of us, we've traveled the world. I know you, like we have lifelong friends. I've seen things that, you know, people don't just see just because of this community. So
yeah, bro, everything I have to arboriculture, bro, all of it. Do you know what I mean? To QAA, to NZR, they've helped me so much just in me becoming who I am. Like arboriculture is a big, climbing especially is a big part of like the reason I can even sit here, talk to you.
Yeah,
so perfect,
we'll get into that one episode. I'd love to get back to your, you know, start in trees. Go through that.
Perfect. Awesome, bro. Good to talk, eh?
You too, mate.
Bye. We'll do it again.
Sounds good.
You're the man, bro.
Catches.
Sweet.